The rain hammered the cracked asphalt outside the emergency room doors like a relentless drumbeat, turning the night into a blurred watercolor of neon lights and shadows. Inside the sterile glow of fluorescent bulbs at Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Elias Grant, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of quiet authority that came from years of stitching up the broken, stood over a chart, his face etched with exhaustion. It was just past midnight, and the ER had been a war zone all evening. Car wrecks from the storm, a bar fight spillover, the usual chaos. But nothing prepared him for the roar that shattered the fragile calm. The doors burst open with a gust of wind and water, and in stumbled a man built like a storm cloud, leather jacket slick with rain, tattoos snaking up his arms like ancient runes, the insignia of the Iron Vipers Motorcycle Club gleaming faintly on his chest. His name was Marcus Hale, though no one there knew that yet. He clutched his side, blood seeping through his fingers, staining the white tile floor in dark rivulets. Behind him, two more bikers, rough-hewn faces under helmets, half carried him, their boots thudding heavily. "Help him!" one growled, voice thick with gravel and desperation. Marcus collapsed onto a gurney, gasping, his eyes wild with pain. A gunshot wound, fresh and ragged, just below the ribs, the kind that whispered of back-alley deals gone wrong. Dr. Grant moved forward instinctively, gloved hands ready, but the charge nurse, a wiry woman with a clipboard and a perpetual scowl, stepped in his path. "Wait!" she hissed, glancing at the security feed on her monitor. "Club colors, you know the policy." The hospital board had cracked down months ago, after a brawl involving the Vipers had trashed the waiting room. No treatment for known gang affiliates without law enforcement present. It was a rule born of fear, not medicine, insurance against lawsuits, against the chaos that followed men like these. Elias's jaw tightened. He'd seen the memos, ignored the whispers. This man was bleeding out, pulse thready, skin paling under the harsh lights. "Policy be damned," Elias muttered, reaching for the suture kit. But the nurse grabbed his arm, her voice rising. "You'll lose your job, Doc. Board says no." The ER fell into a tense hush, monitors beeping like accusatory heartbeats. Marcus's eyes locked onto Elias's, a flicker of something raw passing between them. Plea, defiance, the unspoken code of men who'd stared down worse. The other bikers shifted, hands hovering near hidden holsters, the air thick with the scent of wet leather and cordite. Elias hesitated, the weight of his mortgage, his daughter's tuition, his decade of oaths pressing down. Then, from the shadows of the triage station, a figure emerged. Nurse Lena Brooks, her dark skin glowing under the lights, scrubs crisp despite the long shift. She was the backbone of nights like this, mid-40s, steady hands that had pulled miracles from the brink, her braided hair tied back with quiet resolve. No fan of the rules that chained good sense. She'd patched up enough strays to know when to bend. "Step aside," Lena said softly, her voice cutting through the standoff like a scalpel. She didn't wait for permission, wheeling a crash cart closer, her eyes never leaving Marcus. The charge nurse sputtered, but Lena was already at work. IV line in, fluids pumping, her touch efficient and unyielding. "Pressure's dropping," she called to Elias, who snapped back into motion, barking orders to the stunned techs. Together, they stabilized him. Gauze packed the wound, monitors stabilized, the bleeding slowed to a trickle. Marcus's breathing eased, his grip on the gurney loosening as color returned to his face. The bikers watched, silent sentinels, their tension uncoiling into something like gratitude. But the fallout came swift as the storm outside. By dawn, as the rain tapered to a drizzle and the first grey light filtered through the blinds, the hospital administrator, a suit with a clipboard of his own, stormed into Elias's office. "You treated him without clearance," the man said, voice clipped. "Against protocol. You're suspended, pending review. Clean out your desk." Elias stood there, coffee going cold in his mug, the sting of injustice burning hotter than he'd expected. He'd saved a life, Simple as that, but in this place, rules trumped blood. He nodded, packing his things with mechanical precision, the photo of his late wife on the desk, a reminder of promises he'd already broken once. Lena found him in the parking lot, rain-slicked pavement reflecting the hospital's glow like a shattered mirror. She leaned against her beat-up sedan, arms crossed. "Heard about the suspension?" she said, her tone matter-of-fact, no pity. Elias shrugged, the weight of his coat suddenly heavy. "Worth it?" she asked, tilting her head. He thought of Marcus's eyes, the raw trust in that moment. "Yeah," he replied, voice low. "But now what? I got bills, a kid counting on me." Lena's smile was small, knowing. Men like him don't forget, and neither do I. Word spread through the Vipers like wildfire on dry brush. By noon, Marcus was in a private room. Lena had pulled strings, called in favors from the night staff, his wound cleaned and stitched, infection warded off by her vigilant watch. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the IV a steady rhythm. The club president, a grizzled veteran named Harlan Reed, arrived with a thunderous rumble of Harleys outside, the lot filling with chrome and leather. Harlan clasped Marcus's hand, his weathered face creasing. "You owe that doc and nurse your hide," he rumbled. Marcus nodded, wincing as he shifted. "More than that. Remember what we promised back in Nam? No man left behind." Harlan's eyes hardened. "Club's word is iron. We ride for them now." Elias drove home through the mist-shrouded streets, the city unfolding like a faded postcard, boarded shops, flickering signs, the distant wail of sirens. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Oh, you. Stay low. Help's coming." He pocketed it, unease twisting in his gut. Little did he know, across town, Lena was slipping Marcus a burner phone, her voice a whisper. "Tell your boys the doc's good people, but there's trouble brewing. Cops sniffing around the club, old scores." Marcus gripped her hand. "Family now," he said simply, and in that promise, forged in blood and rain, the wheels of something larger began to turn. The afternoon sun broke through, casting long shadows over the hospital roof, where a single biker stood watch, silent, vigilant, the emblem on his back a vow etched in metal. Elias pulled into his driveway, the house quiet, his daughter at school. He sat there, engine idling, the scent of rain clinging to his clothes. Redemption wasn't always loud. Sometimes it rode in on the edge of a storm, pulling you into its path, and as the first Viper's scout rolled by his street, engine purring low, Elias felt the pull, a forgotten oath stirring, binding him to men he'd never sought. But deeper in the city's underbelly, whispers grew. The shooting wasn't random. It tied to a corrupt web, dirty cops shaking down the club for protection money, a trail leading to the hospital's own board. Lena knew fragments, pieced from late-night confessions. She'd seen the signs, falsified records, bribes disguised as donations. Saving Marcus had cracked the facade, and now the real ride was just beginning. Elias, unpacking his bag inside, glanced at the window. A shadow flickered, then gone. The promise had been made, unspoken but ironclad. Loyalty didn't ask permission, it demanded everything. The afternoon light slanted through the blinds of Elias Grant's modest living room, painting stripes across the worn oak coffee table, where a half-empty mug of coffee sat cooling. He slumped into the armchair, the fabric sagging under his weight like an old friend bearing too many burdens. The house was still, save for the distant hum of traffic on the rain-slicked boulevard outside, a reminder that the world kept turning, indifferent to the fracture in his own. His suspension papers lay crumpled on the side table, the administrator's signature a stark black scrawl against the white. 10 years at Mercy General reduced to this, a man adrift in his own home, the scent of stale takeout lingering from breakfast. His daughter Sophie, 16, with her mother's sharp eyes and a quiet fire that Elias both cherished and feared, would be home soon from school. He rubbed his temples, the throb of a headache building like storm clouds. Saving Marcus had felt right in the moment, an echo of the oaths he'd sworn in med school, back when medicine was about mending, not maneuvering around boardroom politics. But now, the bills would pile up, mortgage on this fixer-upper, Sophie's braces, the college fund that was more hope than reality. He glanced at the framed photo on the mantel, him and his late wife Anna on their wedding day, her laugh captured mid-bloom. "Promises!" he murmured to the empty room. She'd made him vow to always do what was right, no matter the cost. Ironclad, she'd called it, but right now it felt like a chain. A low rumble pierced the quiet, growing from a purr to a growl that vibrated through the floorboards. Elias straightened, peering through the window. In the driveway next door, a lone Harley idled, its chrome catching the sun like polished silver. The rider, a stocky man in his 50s, salt and pepper beard framing a face etched with road miles, cut the engine and swung a leg over, helmet tucked under his arm. He scanned the street with the casual vigilance of someone who'd learned to trust his instincts over eyes alone. Elias's pulse quickened. He knew that emblem, the coiled viper on the vest. Word travels fast in shadows. The man approached the door with unhurried steps, boots scuffing the concrete path. Elias opened it before the knock, the cool air carrying the faint tang of exhaust and leather. "Dr. Grant," the biker said, voice rough but steady, extending a calloused hand. "Name's Jax, from the Vipers. Marcus sent me." Elias hesitated, then shook it, firm grip, no games. Jax's eyes, deep-set and assessing, held no threat, only a measured respect. "Heard what you did. Club don't forget that." He pulled an envelope from his inside pocket, thick and unmarked. "For the rough patch. Cash, no strings, just stay safe." Elias took it, the paper crinkling under his fingers, weight suggesting enough to bridge the gap until his next gig. "I didn't do it for payback," he said, voice low, glancing over Jax's shoulder at the empty street. Jax nodded, a ghost of a smile cracking his features. "We know, that's why. Harlan, our press, says you're family now. If trouble knocks, we answer." He paused, eyes narrowing. "And it might. Cops been circling the club, shaking us down for protection. That shooting, tied to it, dirty badges higher up. Your hospital's in the mix. Board takes cuts from the pot." Elias's stomach twisted. He'd suspected the undercurrents, the way donations flowed to execs like unmarked rivers, but hearing it laid bare felt like stepping into a fault line. Before Elias could respond, the school bus wheezed to a stop at the corner, Sophie's backpack slung over one shoulder as she trudged up the walk. She froze at the sight of Jax, her dark curls bouncing as she tilted her head. "Dad? Who's this?" Jax tipped an imaginary hat, stepping back with easy grace. "Just a friend of your old man's. Take care, Doc." His Harley coughed to life, the roar fading into the neighborhood's hum as he rode off, leaving a swirl of dust in his wake. Sophie dropped her bag by the door, eyeing the envelope in Elias's hand. "Suspension stuff?" she asked, voice laced with the worry she tried to hide behind teenage nonchalance. He pulled her into a hug, the scent of her vanilla shampoo a small anchor. "Something like that. We'll be okay." Over dinner, pasta from a box, steam rising like fragile hope. He skirted the details, talking instead about her history project on local legends, the old tales of outlaws and honor that dotted the city's faded lore. But her questions lingered, sharp as scalpels. "Why'd they fire you, Dad? For helping someone?" He met her gaze, the weight of unspoken truths heavy. Because sometimes rules forget the why. Across town, in the dim glow of Mercy General's break room, Lena Brooks poured coffee from a dented pot, the bitter aroma cutting through the bleach-scented air. Her shift had dragged into overtime, charts blurring under the fluorescent hum. Marcus was stable upstairs, his room guarded by rotating vipers who blended into the night shift like shadows. She'd checked on him twice, adjusting his drip, listening to his gravelly thanks. "You and the doc," he'd said. "You're the real iron around here." Lena had smiled, but her mind raced. Fragments of overheard calls, the charge nurse's furtive whispers about donors from the force. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from an old contact. "Board meeting tomorrow. Your name on the agenda. Watch your back." She pocketed it, resolve hardening like steel in a forge. Saving Marcus wasn't just a shift's work. It was a stand against the rot eating at the edges. Cops demanding tribute from the club, hospital suits pocketing the skim, lives caught in the crossfire. She'd lost her brother to similar shadows years back, a veteran chewed up by the system. No more. As she clocked out, the parking lot stretched empty under sodium lamps, rain puddles mirroring the stars. A viper idled at the curb, Harlan himself, broad as a barn door, gesturing her over. "Miss Brooks," he rumbled, helmet off, wind-tousled hair silvered by time. "Marcus speaks high of you. Club owes a debt." Lena leaned against the chain-link fence, arms crossed. "Debt's paid when the truth comes out. Your boy's shooting, it's no accident. Ties to the hospital, the badges." Harlan's jaw set, eyes like polished flint. "We ride together then. Promise from the old days. No one stands alone." She nodded, the packed ceiling in the quiet night, engines idling like patient beasts. Back at home, Elias lay awake, the envelope's contents tucked in his nightstand. A lifeline, but laced with risk. Sophie slept down the hall, her dreams untroubled. Outside, the city breathed, distant sirens, the whisper of wind through pines. The shadow at the window earlier, paranoia or warning? He didn't know, but the pull was there, a forgotten oath resurfacing. Loyalty once given didn't fade, it forged paths through the storm, and as dawn crept in, painting the ceiling gold, Elias felt the first stirrings of resolve. The ride wasn't over, it was just gaining speed. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains of Elias Grant's kitchen, casting a soft glow on the linoleum floor where coffee grounds scattered like forgotten confetti. He stood at the counter, pouring a second cup, the steam rising in lazy spirals that carried the rich, earthy scent of the brew, his one ritual in a day, unraveling at the seams. Sophie had left for school with a quick kiss on the cheek, her backpack slung low, eyes searching his face for cracks he wouldn't show. "Call if you need anything, Dad," she'd said, voice steady but laced with that teenage intuition that saw through walls. Now the house echoed with emptiness, the tick of the wall clock marking time like a metronome in a silent symphony. Elias sipped the coffee, bitter on his tongue, and unfolded the morning paper on the table. Headlines blurred, local scandals, budget cuts at public services, the usual veil over deeper rot. But his mind wandered to Jax's words, the envelope's quiet promise burning a hole in his pocket. Family now. The Viper's code felt foreign yet familiar, echoing the brotherhood he'd glimpsed in his own father's war stories, men bound by sweat and silence, not blood. He set the mug down, fingers tracing the scar on his knuckle from a long-ago OR mishap when saving a life meant defying orders from above. Ironclad, Anna had called it. The thought twisted like a knife. He'd buried her 5 years back, cancer stealing her light, leaving him to navigate the shadows alone. A sharp knock at the back door jolted him upright, the sound muffled but insistent, like knuckles on weathered wood. Elias crossed the room in 3 strides, peering through the sheer panel. There stood Lena Brooks, her nurse's scrubs traded for jeans and a faded denim jacket, braided hair loose over her shoulders, carrying the faint scent of hospital antiseptic that clung like a second skin. She held a thermos in one hand, her expression a mix of resolve and caution, dark eyes scanning the yard beyond. "Mind if I come in?" she asked through the glass, voice low. Elias unlatched the door, stepping aside as cool air rushed in, carrying the crisp bite of pine from the nearby woods. They settled at the kitchen table, the thermos yielding hot tea that steamed between them. Chamomile, Lena's go-to for frayed nerves. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted, wrapping her hands around the cup. After Harlan's chat last night, pieces started fitting. The shooting that brought Marcus in, not some random beef, cops, bad ones, pressuring the club for payoffs, and the hospital, where the laundering front. Donations from anonymous sources funneled through the board to keep the lights on. But it's blood money, Elias. Your suspension, that's them tying off loose ends. Her words hung heavy, the room shrinking under their weight. The distant hum of a lawnmower outside a mocking counterpoint to the storm brewing within. Elias leaned back, chair creaking, his mind racing through the hospital's underbelly, the executive lunches he'd skipped, the vague audits that never quite added up. "I thought it was just bureaucracy," he said, voice rough. "Red tape to cover asses, but this, it's a machine." Lena nodded, her gaze steady, the lines around her eyes deepening from years of witnessing quiet injustices. Patients turned away for lack of funds. Veterans like her brother lost to the system's grind. "Machine needs oil," she replied. Marcus overheard Jack's talking codes, nights when ambulances roll in clean, no questions, because the board's in bed with the force. Saving him poked the bear. Now they're watching us. As if summoned by the words, Elias's phone vibrated on the counter, a blocked number, the screen glowing like an uninvited guest. He answered, speaker on mute, the voice on the other end gravelly and urgent. Harlan Reed. "Doc, nurse, word's out you're in the crosshairs. Club's got eyes on your places. Stay inside today. We'll handle the ride." The line clicked dead, leaving a void filled only by the fridge's hum. Lena's jaw tightened, but a spark of something fierce lit her features. Defiance, the kind forged in loss. "No more hiding," she said. "My brother's death. It was like this. System chewed him up, spit him out. I won't let it take you or Sophie." The afternoon unfolded in tense fragments. Elias pacing the living room, windows cracked to catch any unusual sounds, the growl of engines, the crunch of tires on gravel. He thought of Sophie at school, her history class debating outlaws who bent rules for honor, unaware her own father was stepping into that fray. Lena stayed, brewing more tea, sharing stories of her shifts. The viper who'd come in last year with a broken arm from a fall, eyes whispering thanks for no report filed. "They're not monsters," she said, "just men keeping promises in a world that broke theirs first." Elias absorbed it, the narrative shifting from fear to a reluctant alliance, the scent of chamomile weaving through the air like a fragile truce. By mid-afternoon, the sun dipped low, painting the walls in amber hues, shadows lengthening like fingers reaching across the floor. A text from Sophie. "Practice running late. Love you." Elias replied, thumb hovering, then pocketed the phone as another rumble approached. Not the isolated purr of before, but a convoy, low and purposeful, circling the block without stopping. Vipers on patrol, their presence a silent shield. Lena rose, glancing at the clock. "I need to check on Marcus. Board meetings tonight. I'll eavesdrop what I can." She clasped his shoulder, her touch warm and anchoring. "We're in this ride together, Elias, ironclad." He walked her to the door, the yard bathed in golden light, birdsong a deceptive calm. As her car pulled away, taillights fading into the tree-lined street, Elias lingered on the porch, the wood cool under his bare feet. The envelope from Jack's weighed in his pocket, a tangible vow. But deeper still stirred the old oath, to heal, to stand. Corruption's web tightened, threads pulling at the hospital, the club, their lives. But in the quiet, with the wind rustling leaves like whispered secrets, Elias felt the stir of purpose. Redemption wasn't a solo path. It roared in, unbidden, demanding loyalty's price. And as the first stars pricked the sky, he knew the real shadows were just awakening. The evening shadows stretched long across the parking lot of Mercy General Hospital, the sodium lamps flickering to life like hesitant stars against the deepening indigo sky. Lena Brooks navigated the corridors with the practiced stealth of someone who knew every blind spot, her sneakers silent on the linoleum that gleamed under the sterile hum of overhead lights. The air carried the mingled scents of antiseptic and overbrewed coffee, a familiar veil that masked the undercurrents of unease rippling through the night shift. Board meeting in the executive suite, top floor, glass walls overlooking the city like a throne room for the untouchable. She'd volunteered for the late rounds, citing a patient consult, but her real purpose burned sharper: to listen, to gather the threads of the web that had ensnared them all. She paused at the nurse's station, clipboard in hand as camouflage, exchanging nods with the skeleton crew, techs bleary-eyed from the day's chaos, the charge nurse mercifully off-shift. Up the service elevator, the ascent hummed with tension, the mirrored walls reflecting her determined gaze, braids swaying slightly with the motion. Lena's mind replayed Harlan's words from the lot. No one stands alone. It echoed her brother's last letter, scrawled in a VA ward before the system let him slip away. Promises broken by indifference. She wouldn't let history repeat. The doors slid open to the hushed polish of the admin floor, carpet muffling her steps as she approached the conference room, the low murmur of voices seeping through the frosted glass like smoke. Inside, the board sat around a mahogany table, suits crisp under the recessed lighting, folders splayed like battle plans. The administrator, Mr. Caldwell, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a smile that never reached his eyes, leaned forward, his voice a clipped cadence. The incident with the Viper last night. It's contained, but Grant's suspension sends a message: no more freelancing. A murmur of agreement rippled, punctuated by the clink of a coffee spoon. Lena hovered in the alcove, pretending to check a chart on the wall-mounted board, ears straining. Another voice, gravelly from years of boardroom wars. And the nurse? Brooks. She jumped the gun too. We can't have staff undermining policy, especially with our partners in blue expecting discretion. Partners. The word landed like a stone in still water. Lena's grip tightened on the clipboard, knuckles paling against her skin. She pieced it. The donations, Harlan mentioned, funneled from police shakedowns of the club. Extortion dressed as protection, laundered through hospital coffers to pad executive pockets. Marcus's shooting, a warning shot in a larger game, meant to silence the Viper's resistance. Her pulse thrummed, a steady drumbeat urging action. She slipped away as the meeting dragged into budget reviews, the elevator descent a blur of resolve. Evidence, she needed proof, something ironclad to shatter the facade. Across town, Elias Grant sat on the edge of his porch steps, the wood creaking under him as twilight bled into night. The air cooled. Carrying the earthy tang of damp soil from the garden, Sophie had half-heartedly tended last spring, tomato plants, now wild and untamed, mirroring his own unraveling edges. He'd spent the afternoon in restless loops, fixing a loose cabinet door that had annoyed him for months, the hammer's thud a futile outlet for the storm inside. The envelope from Jack's lay open on the kitchen counter, bills sorted and paid in crisp folds, enough to breathe, but the weight of obligation pressed heavier. Family now. What did that mean for a man who'd built walls after Anna's death, shielding Sophie from the world's sharper teeth? Headlights swept the street, slow and deliberate, not the school's bus, but a familiar rumble that settled into a low idle at the curb. Jax dismounted again, his Harley purring to silence like a beast at rest. He carried a paper bag this time, grease-spotted from some roadside diner, the aroma of burgers and fries wafting as he approached. "Evening, Doc," he said, settling beside Elias without invitation, the step groaning in protest. "Figured you might not have eaten. Sophie's still out?" Elias nodded, accepting the bag, the warmth seeping through like an unexpected kindness. They ate in companionable quiet at first, the night's chorus of crickets filling the gaps, streetlights buzzing faintly, a dog barking in the distance. Jax wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes on the horizon where the city's glow smudged the stars. "Harlan's calling a meet tonight. Club's intel says the heat's rising. Cops raiding our shop tomorrow, fishing for dirt on the shooting. But it's a play to flush us out, tie loose ends like you and Lena." Elias paused mid-bite, the burger turning leaden in his mouth. "Me? I'm just a suspended doc." Jax's laugh was short, bark-like. "Nah, you saved Marcus. That's blood oath in our book. Harlan rode with men like your old man in the service. Promises that outlast the wars. We're pulling you in, if you're willing. Eyes and ears at the hospital. Lena's already game." The offer hung between them, laced with the scent of onions and exhaust, the night's chill nipping at Elias's skin. He thought of Sophie's questions over dinner, her probing gaze seeing the fractures he couldn't hide. Risking more for strangers turned kin, but the alternative gnawed deeper, silence in the face of rot, letting corruption claim another piece of the city Anna had loved. "What do you need?" he asked finally, voice steady as the porch rail he gripped. Jax's nod was approval, pure and wordless. "Start with records. Anything on those donations. We'll ride the rest." As Jax revved away, taillights carving red trails into the dark, Elias retreated inside, the house's warmth a fragile barrier. He poured a glass of water, the faucet's rush drowning the inner roar, and sat at the desk in his study. Dusty files from old shifts, a laptop humming to life. Sophie texted, "Home soon, practice was killer." He smiled faintly, typing back reassurance, but his fingers lingered on the keys. Pulling up hospital portals he'd bookmarked out of habit. Shadows deepened in the corners, the screen's glow illuminating his face like a confessional. Loyalty's pull was inexorable, a forgotten vow resurfacing in the quiet hours. Miles away, Lena's car cut through the rain-slicked streets, wipers slashing rhythmically against the first drops of a gathering storm. Her phone buzzed. "Harlan, a meet at the warehouse. Bring what you heard." She accelerated, the engine's growl a match for the thunder rumbling low. The board's words echoed. Partners, discretion, loose ends, no more. As lightning forked the sky, illuminating the road ahead in stark white, Lena felt the pact solidify, ironclad, unbreakable. The ride accelerated, weaving through the night toward confrontation, where promises met the edge of truth. If this chapter's tension has you on the edge, smash that like button. It keeps these stories of hidden honor rolling strong. The warehouse loomed on the city's frayed edge, a hulking skeleton of rusted steel and cracked concrete bathed in the erratic flash of lightning that clawed the sky. Rain lashed the tin roof in sheets, a cacophony that drowned the distant thunder, turning the gravel lot into a churning sea of mud. Lena Brooks pulled her sedan to a stop beside a row of Harleys, their chrome dulled by the downpour, engines long silenced, but still radiating the heat of the ride. She killed the headlights, the beam cutting off like a severed lifeline, and sat for a moment, wipers slapping rhythmically against the storm. Her heart pounded in sync, the overheard boardroom whispers replaying, partners, loose ends, discretion. The weight of it pressed against her chest, heavier than the thermos of tea she'd left cooling in Elias's kitchen that afternoon. She stepped out, jacket pulled tight against the chill, boots sinking into the muck as she made for the side door. A single floodlight swung overhead, casting swinging shadows that danced like uneasy spectres. The door creaked open under her push, spilling her into a cavernous space lit by bare bulbs, strung like forgotten Christmas lights. The air hung thick with the scent of oil and damp earth, mingled with the faint, acrid bite of cigarette smoke. There, in the center, the Iron Vipers gathered, not the full thunder of the club, but a core of hardened riders. Harlan Reed at the fore, his broad frame silhouetted against a makeshift table of crates. Marcus Hale propped on a folding chair nearby, pale but unbowed, his bandaged side hidden under a clean club tee. Jax leaned against a beam, arms crossed, eyes sharp as he nodded her in. "Lena," Harlan rumbled, voice cutting through the rain's roar like gravel under tires. He extended a massive hand, calloused from decades of throttle and wrench, pulling her into the circle. No formalities. These men moved on instinct, bonds forged in the fire of shared scars. Marcus met her gaze, a flicker of gratitude softening his rugged features. "You made it through the storm," he said, voice still raw from the ordeal. She nodded, shaking off the water that beaded on her braids, and laid out what she'd gleaned from the executive suite. The coded talk of donations, the ties to badges that demanded silence. The group leaned in, faces etched with the quiet fury of men who'd seen promises broken too many times, in foxholes overseas, in backroom deals stateside, in the slow bleed of a system that favored the suited over the scarred. Harlan's fist clenched on the crate, knuckles whitening. "It's a racket," he growled, the words echoing off the walls. "Cops squeeze us for protection. Pay up or pay with blood." That shot to Marcus. Message to Fold. Hospital washes the cash. Board gets fat. And folks like you and the doc get painted as the problem. Jack shifted, pulling a worn ledger from his vest. Club records, scribbled entries of payoffs dodged and threats logged. Lena scanned it under the harsh light, her nurse's eye spotting patterns like symptoms in a chart. Dates aligning with anonymous hospital influxes, raids that conveniently missed the real players. "We got enough to crack it," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "But exposing them means riding straight into the fire. Elias, he's in." Marcus nodded, wincing as he adjusted his position. "Called him on the burner. He's digging hospital files now. Says it's for his girl, Sophie. Won't let the rot touch her future." The mention stirred something deep in Lena, an echo of her brother's faded photos tucked in her glove box. A young vet, eyes bright with unkept dreams, lost to the same indifferent machine. Family chosen, not born. That's what Harlan had promised in the lot, and here it was, raw and real, binding a nurse, a doctor, and outlaws in a pact against the shadows. Thunder rattled the rafters, as if the sky itself approved, the rain's rhythm a drumbeat urging them forward. Across the sprawl of rain-swept streets, Elias Grant hunched over his laptop in the dim study, the screen's blue glow carving hollows under his eyes. The house was a cocoon of quiet. Sophie tucked away in her room with headphones on, oblivious to the storm's fury outside. He'd logged into the hospital's back channels, old credentials still active, a glitch in the system's armor he'd never exploited before. Files scrolled, donation logs masked as grants, transfers to offshore accounts thinly veiled as vendor payments. Names jumped out, Caldwell's signature on too many, links to a detective shell company that screamed payoff. His fingers paused on the keys, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. This wasn't just whistleblowing, it was war, pulling him deeper into the Viper's orbit, away from the safe harbor he'd built for Sophie after Anna's light dimmed. A floorboard creaked in the hall. Sophie, padding in with a yawn, robe clutched tight. "Dad? Still up?" "That storm's wild." She hovered in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the hall light, a reminder of fragility in the chaos. Elias minimized the screen, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just work stuff, kiddo. Go back to bed." She lingered, sensing the undercurrent, her voice soft but probing. "The biker guy earlier. Is this about that? You look like you're carrying the world." He rose, pulling her into a hug, the scent of her shampoo, vanilla and rain, grounding him. "It's about keeping promises, Soph, the kind that matter." She nodded against his shoulder, trusting but wary, before retreating, leaving him alone with the glow and the growing resolve. The phone buzzed. Harlan's line. "Doc, we got the pieces. Lena's here. Tomorrow, we move. Copies to a clean contact. Anonymous drop, but watch your six. Raids incoming, and they'll tie you to us." Elias glanced at the window, rain streaking the glass like tears. The neighborhood dark, save for the occasional sweep of headlights. "I'm in," he said, the words solidifying like iron in the forge. Hanging up, he backed up the files to a thumb drive, tucking it into his pocket, a talisman of the oath now shared. Redemption's path twisted through moral quagmires, but loyalty lit the way, silent and unyielding. Back at the warehouse, the meeting wound down. Plans sketched on a napkin under the bulb's glare. Safe houses, decoy rides, the drop point at dawn. Lena slipped out first, the rain welcoming her like an old ally, soaking through as she dashed to her car. Harlan watched her go, then turned to his men. "This ain't just club business. It's for the doc, the nurse, for every promise we swore." Engines roared to life one by one. A symphony of defiance cutting the night, taillights piercing the deluge like red embers. Marcus stayed behind, gaze fixed on the storm, his survival a spark that would ignite the blaze. Elias lay awake long after, the thunder a distant rumble now, Sophie's soft breathing down the hall a fragile anchor. The thumb drive burned against his nightstand, the web of corruption fraying at the edges under their collective pull. Dawn would bring the ride's next turn, justice not in vengeance, but in truth's quiet thunder. In the chosen family's bond, old scars mended, forging something unbreakable amid the gathering shadows. Dawn broke over the city like a reluctant witness, the storm's fury spent into a hazy mist that clung to the rooftops and blurred the horizon. The air hung heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and blooming jasmine from cracked sidewalks, a fragile renewal after the night's deluge. Elias Grant stood in his driveway, the thumb drive a small, unyielding weight in his coat pocket, its edges pressing against his ribs like a whispered vow. He'd barely slept, the house's silence broken only by Sophie's early rise, pancakes sizzling in the kitchen, her humming a melody from some school playlist, oblivious to the fault lines shifting beneath their feet. He'd kissed her forehead goodbye, the vanilla trace of her hair lingering as she boarded the bus, her wave a beacon in the grey light. Now, alone, he scanned the street. Empty save for the distant purr of an engine, a Viper Scout, circling like a guardian shadow. The drop point was an old industrial park on the city's outskirts, a forgotten yard of chain link and overgrown weeds, where rusted shipping containers squatted like silent sentinels. Elias arrived early, his sedan crunching over gravel that sparkled with residual raindrops, the radio murmuring weather updates he ignored. He parked near a weathered bench, the wood slick under his palms as he sat, breath fogging in the chill. Minutes stretched, tension coiling in his gut like a spring. This was the pivot. Files copied. Anonymous handover to a journalist contact Lena had vetted through old nursing networks. A woman with a nose for corruption and a platform that reached beyond the shadows. No guns, no raids, just truth, laid bare like an open wound demanding stitches. A low rumble announced their arrival first, the Vipers, not in thunderous convoy but a measured trio, Harlan on point, Jax flanking. Marcus riding pillion despite the ache in his side, his presence a testament to the life they'd clawed back. Their Harleys gleamed dully in the morning haze, exhaust curling like incense as they cut engines. Harlan dismounted with a grunt, his boots thudding solidly, the viper patch on his back catching the first slant of sun. "Doc!" he greeted, voice a gravel anchor in the quiet. No wasted words. He clasped Elias's shoulder, the grip conveying the iron of their shared pact. Marcus nodded from his perch, colour returning to his face, the hospital's pallor fading under road wind. "Owe you this ride," he said simply, eyes meeting Elias's with the raw honesty of men who'd brushed death's edge. Lena arrived next, her sedan pulling up with a soft crunch, headlights flicking off to reveal her in the passenger seat. No driving solo, her braids tied back, jacket zipped against the damp. She emerged carrying a slim folder of her own, eavesdropped notes transcribed in hurried script, timelines matching the digital trail. "Boards scrambling," she said, joining the circle, her voice steady as the mist-shrouded fence. "Caldwell called an emergency huddle this morning. They smell the leak." The group huddled by the bench, voices low under the canopy of a lone oak, leaves dripping rhythmically. Harlan spread a rough map on the hood of Elias's car, rain spots beading on the paper, routes in, the journalist's ETA, escape vectors if the badges showed. Jax's ledger joined the fray, pages flipping like chapters in a long-overdue reckoning. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Clara Voss, mid-40s, notepad ever ready, arrived precisely on time, her compact hybrid whispering to a halt. No fanfare, she stepped out, scanning them with professional detachment that softened at Lena's introduction. "I've seen enough hospital scandals to know when one's real," Clara said, accepting the thumb drive and folder with gloved hands, her eyes flicking over the vipers without judgment. "This ties the knots. Extortion logs, laundered funds, the shooting as leverage. It'll hit the wires by noon. Front page, no holds barred." Elias watched the exchange, the weight lifting incrementally from his chest, replaced by a quiet surge of purpose. This was justice's poetry, not fists, but facts, unraveling the web thread by thread. Harlan's nod was solemn, a silent seal on the promise, no man or woman left to the system's grind. But the morning held one last twist, a shadow uncoiling from the mist. Tires screeched at the park's entrance, a black SUV, unmarked, barreling through the gate with aggressive purpose. Two figures emerged. Caldwell, pale and disheveled in his suit, flanked by a burly detective whose badge gleamed falsely under the rising sun. "Grant! Brooks!" Caldwell barked, voice cracking with feigned authority, the air thickening with tension. "Hand over whatever you've got. This is internal hospital business." The vipers shifted instinctively, a wall of leather and resolve, Harlan's hand hovering near his belt, not drawing, but ready. Elias stepped forward, pulse steady, the thumb drive's ghost in his pocket now a shield. "It's over, Caldwell. The donations, the payoffs, it's all coming out. You chose the wrong side of the oath." The detective sneered, radio crackling at his hip, but Lena's voice cut through, calm and cutting. "We've got witnesses, recordings. Your partners won't save you when the light hits." A standoff hung, the mist swirling like breath held collective, the oak's leaves pattering a countdown. Then sirens wailed distant, real ones, blue lights flashing at the horizon, Clara's tip already pulling the honest badges. Caldwell's face crumpled, the bluster draining like rain into cracks. He backed away, the detective muttering curses as they retreated to the SUV, tires spinning mud in defeat. No shots, no chase, just the quiet unraveling of lies under truth's gaze. By midday, the story broke. Headlines scrolling on Clara's feed. "Corruption ring exposed, hospital board, police in extortion scandal." Elias watched from his kitchen, Sophie home early with wide eyes, the two of them sharing the screen's glow over sandwiches. The scent of mustard sharp and grounding. His suspension lifted by afternoon call, reinstatement, commendation even. The board's rot purged in a swift sweep. Lena texted, "Clean hands now. Ride's worth it." Across town the vipers gathered at their shop, Harleys lined like a victorious phalanx, Marcus toasting with sodas under the sun. Harlan raised his bottle. To promises kept, ironclad. Elias stood on his porch that evening, the sky clearing to a canvas of deepening blue, stars pricking through like emerging hopes. Sophie joined him, leaning on the rail, the day's revelations shared in gentle fragments, enough to bind, not burden. The rumble of a single Harley approached, Jax pulling up with a nod and a grin. "Club Square, you're welcome any time." Elias shook his hand. The bond sealed in that simple exchange, chosen family forged in rain and resolve, redemption whispered in the wind, a legacy of quiet courage where old scars mended into strength unbreakable. As the taillight faded, Elias pulled Sophie close, the night's hush wrapping them like a promise renewed. In a world of broken oaths, they'd ridden true, justice won not by force, but by the unyielding heart of loyalty. Thank you for joining this journey of unbreakable promises. If these tales of chosen family and quiet courage resonate with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more rides ahead.